Hello, welcome to CONvergence 2018. My name is Gregory Parks and you are watching CONLink. I have one of our guests of honor here today. Our current guest is the author of Ring of Swords, winner of a Minnesota Book Award. She also wrote a short work titled Dapple, which won the Galactic Spectrum Award. And she also wrote Woman of the Iron People, which not only won the Mythopoeic Award, but also won the very first Tiptree Award. Folks, please welcome Eleanor Arneson. How are you today? Thank you for coming in.
I'm fine, actually.
Ah, beautiful. Well, it's always nice to have people from our local scene here, and especially authors. I grew up in Iowa, and I knew of very few authors that were actually from my hometown or home state, but it's marvelous, I think, that we have a convention like CONvergence here, and we're able to bring so many local artists here like yourself. So thank you for joining us. So please give a little history of your involvement with CONvergence. You were telling me earlier this is not your first attendance as a guest of honor. When was your first appearance as a guest of honor?
You know, I cannot actually remember what year. It was pretty early in the history of CONvergence, and it was a terrific experience. I can remember at closing ceremonies, I said, the comment I made was, you have to do this convention again over and over and over because it was so neat. It was, it's a lovely convention.
Oh, beautiful, I agree, and thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. So what was the thing, or what were the things that made you fall in love with sci-fi fantasy? What influenced you to become a writer?
Well, I always wanted to be a writer. I mean, I told stories as a kid before I could read and write. I made them up for my kid brother. There was a TV show called Captain Video that was on in the early 1950s. And I began watching that show, and it was, you know, one of those magical, this is my world, this is the kind of thing I care about. And after Captain Video, I discovered science fiction books and magazines, and it just never stopped. I've been primarily books and written material, but fair amount of media over the years. I was obsessed with Star Trek when the first series, when it first appeared on TV. I didn't like Star Wars, but that's another story.
So, I enjoy it. That's marvelous to hear that you draw your inspiration from other media, not only printed media, but video media as well. And I think that's something that's essential to creating. And so I like hearing that. And what else would you like us to know about you?
Well, you know, I thought about that question, and I think probably the most important thing is that I said that my first contact was early 50s. I have a long experience of the science fiction world. And I first got published in the early 70s, and I belonged to the flood, the generation of women writers who came into the field in the 70s, and not only writers, but critics and women fans. That's when the science fiction world really got a huge number of women. And so if you want to know something about that generation, and you meet me at the con, that's the thing you probably want to ask about.
Oh, marvelous. So what do you, when you're at a convention like this, what do you enjoy about them most? What is your favorite part about conventions?
I like panels. I love costumes. I just love costumes. And I like meeting people. Some of them are people I've known for years. There are people I've known for decades who I meet only at cons. Frequently they live in the Twin Cities, but we somehow never meet. And I like meeting new people.
Beautiful. And when So when it comes to conventions and meeting people, what else excites you about conventions or writing or science fiction, fantasy media overall? What nerdy or geeky things, sci-fi, fantasy things excite you the most?
Well, are you talking about right now? Right now, I have a thing about the Marvel superhero movies. I've got tickets for the Black Panther next week. I have mixed feelings because I have such great hopes for that movie. And I really hope, it comes through.
Yeah.
I'd say right now that I love books, but right now the Marvel movies and some of the anime, the media stuff.
What is it about the Marvel movies and the anime that have you so engaged right now, that have you hooked and excited?
They're really, really good. And they're interesting. The anime I really like is Studio Ghibli, which is Hayao Miyazaki, I like him because he's just incredibly wonderful. The Marvel movies are obviously very exciting, beautifully done, and they actually deal with some serious questions. I think the moment in the second Captain America movie when Captain America realizes that, we have met the enemy and it is us, is amazing. And that deals with some very real political issues in the U.S. In point of fact, right now, who's the enemy? Is the FBI the enemy? Yeah. Or are they the good guys?
And as far as taking that into consideration, how much of that do you like to inject into your books? There are some people who prefer to have science fiction and fantasy just as pure escapism, and others that insist that there's no way to truly escape because it's always connected to something in our real lives. Where would you place your work in that spectrum?
My work is really about political and social issues. I try to keep it entertaining. I try not to, beat on some topic. But my work is largely about, and this comes out of the 70s feminism in science fiction. I like to write about gender issues and about stereotypes and about prejudice and about how people make their own lives when they don't fit into the stereotypes. Yeah. How do you, a lot of my characters are women who don't like traditional women's roles and men who don't like traditional men's roles. So I do a lot about gender.
Oh, marvelous. Marvelous. Now, in your convention going, and you're just absorbing of different types of media and different stories and sci-fi and fantasy across many genres, is there anybody that you have met who you have just completely geeked out about meeting? Or if not, who do you think that person or those people would be that you would just lose your mind over meeting?
The person I think I was happiest to meet was Ursula K. Le Guin, who just died at the age of 88. And I met her very casually. I didn't have a deep conversation, but I met her twice, and I was very happy to meet her. Right now, I think I would kind of like to meet a bunch of the actors from the Marvel movies. Scarlett Johansson, Chris Hemsworth, Chris Evans. I haven't seen the Black Panther yet, so I can't say who in that movie I'd like to meet. But yeah, and have I ever met actors? Well, I just met you, but I haven't met a lot of actors.
I'm not famous yet.
But yeah, I think it would be fun.
Oh, marvelous. Beautiful. It's always nice to hear that people who create are also excited about other people's creations. What are you working on now? I believe you're working on a sequel right now?
Yeah, I have a novel called Ring of Swords, which was published in the early 90s and is now going to be reprinted, which is very nice. And I have been fiddling around with a sequel to that book for years, and I don't know how long it'll take. The thing is that it's writing a sequel. I have a sequel written, but it's essentially out of date. And so I'm rewriting the sequel. And going back to work that's that far away is kind of difficult. So I work on a lot of short stories. They're easier.
Well, thank you for joining us, Eleanor. It'll be exciting to see what you and other people bring to this year's CONvergence. Thank you very much for joining us for CONvergence 2018. And stay tuned. We'll have more interviews with more guests of honor from this year's CONvergence. Thank you.